What's up, everybody? My name is Alexander Gaston, and welcome to today's episode of Nerd Out, a show where I get to sit down with some amazing people that I have been able to have some form of contact with and have conversations about things I love. Why? Because I want to. And my guest today is a little special to me. It's Eugenio Vargas.
Hi, everybody. How's
Also known as DM Jazzy Hands.
That's me.
Now tell me, Eugenio.
Yeah.
Okay, first off.
I'm so ready.
Listen.
I'm ready.
Okay, I'm a little selfish about this show. Like, it's essentially an excuse for me just to sit down with some fantastic people.
I mean...
So, I'm going to nerd out for 2 seconds.
Oh,
2
no.
seconds about
Oh, no.
this person right here. My first DM
That's
on my
right.
first ever Twitch stream.
Yep.
On my second ever Dungeons & Dragons character.
Yep.
This second love of my life.
Aww.
Because the first one's running the cameras. And now I finally am getting to play with you.
I know.
My character has a crush on your character.
I mean, I think
It's
there's a
hard.
lot of love in that group,
Listen,
I have to say.
with Polly Ravnica, just let's embrace it. Let's embrace it.
We have been.
But that's enough about me. Okay. So tell me, Eugenio, what are we nerding out about today?
So today, as much as I would love to nerd about gaming stuff, I think we should nerd out about my other love and my other career, musical theater.
Yes.
Yeah.
And tell me, so why are we going to be nerding out about that? What's your connection to it?
It is actually what I make my living doing. I've been performing in musical theater since I was about 6 and went to school for acting and orchestral conducting.
And of course,
am
this was
now-
only 14 years ago.
Yes. When I was 6, you mean?
Yes.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I thought you meant went to college 14 years ago, and I was like, hello. Close, but not quite. And I have made my living for the last 10 years as a musical theater actor and singer and music director and conductor.
And if I remember correctly,
Mm-hmm.
you just got done doing In the Heights.
That is correct. I was the associate music director for a 3-city tour, and I'm actually going out in about 3 weeks to start rehearsal for that same production that's getting revived at a new theater.
Oh,
as the
awesome.
lead music director this time.
We won't
so.
talk too much. Hush, hush. But that was super cool because I mean, I don't think I really got the chance to be too much into musical theater. Although I grew up with my family making me watch 1776.
Solid choice.
Fiddler on the Roof.
Okay, all right.
You know, I grew up on musicals, but it's just I never thought they lived outside the movie screen.
Totally.
And so when
Totally.
I got older and I was, Lin-Manuel Miranda was on his way up, and I was like, oh my God, Hamilton's amazing.
Yeah.
Wait, he did other things?
He did other things.
And I emotionally haven't
Bring
been
it
able to
on.
listen to all the In Heights yet because I just am not ready.
Yeah, I feel that.
I've heard half of it, and I understand just how important that is,
Yeah.
especially for him and the culture that he grew up in, that I just feel like I just am not emotionally ready yet.
Oh yeah. I mean, this will be my 5th production of it that I'm doing in a few weeks. So I've conducted the show literally hundreds of times, and I still get choked up at certain points in the show. Yeah.
But
Yeah,
I also
yeah.
have a feeling that it might not be that hard for you because I
I don't know what you mean.
I've made you flick-lumped a few times.
I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, it's not a difficult thing.
Listen, there's nothing wrong with having
No.
your emotions so brimming.
Absolutely.
There are a couple streams that I have cried very openly
I
on.
think you paid me back because I did that to you on our first stream together.
You-
Not the first episode, but
You did.
did.
I'm still not Jonathan and I talked about that. You said it's still one of
I'm
the
not
best
sorry.
moments. Nope, I was not ready. So you've been in it since 6. And so when
Yep.
you're saying conducting, you're like,
yeah, so usually what I do, there was one production in college where I conducted the orchestra, just baton conducted. But usually I play first keyboard and lead the band, sort of conducting with my head, and am the band leader for however many pieces are in the orchestra for the show.
and I had heard him sing, it's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, that position also means teaching the cast the music for the show and taking notes for them and making sure that the music side of the show stays legit throughout the run.
And like, are you saying legit, like consistent? Or are you allowing them to kind of take it a little bit in their own? Is there?
Yeah, a little bit of both. The difference between theater and even musical theater on film is that it has to live and breathe. It changes with the audience every night. That's what makes it so exciting. That's what gets me choked up.
Right.
You know, in this show, there are moments that are very sad and very heartbreaking and and really poignant. But actually, the more and more I do it, the more those moments are very touching to me, but sort of pass me by at this point after hundreds of performances. What gets me now is when we have, I feel like I should back up a little bit. The show is about a Latinx community, mostly Puerto Rican and Dominican, in Washington Heights and Manhattan.
Right.
And to be very quick about it, it's about family, both biological and found. It's about tradition. It's about the meaning of home and the importance of our culture and our traditions and our families. And what really excites me and what gets me now emotional is when I look out before the show starts and I see particularly young brown folks, particularly young Latinx folks in the audience. And I know to clock them in the second act, there's a big number called Carnaval del Barrio, which is Carnival of the Neighborhood. And it's just this big, fantastic, exciting, uplifting number where at the end of it, the cast brings out a bunch of different flags from Latinx countries. And they are they're on stage waving their flags, celebrating their Americanness, celebrating where they came from, celebrating the fact that they have this blended culture, and being able to watch, again, particularly young, particularly Latinx audience members get so excited by this. That's what's exciting to me, and that's what live theater is about. So to answer your question that you asked 10 years ago, I do let the cast sort of live and breathe and change things up a little bit. The orchestra that I'm leading sort of has certain expectations, and we have to stay together, so they can't take it too far. But I absolutely, things change, and that happens. But the notes on the page that Lynn wrote have to be the notes that come out, and things like that. So
I can only imagine how surreal that is to be of a Latin culture and be that ingrained in that, and then be able to see this amazing, beautiful story pulling in new people. Because sometimes it's, and I've seen a lot of that with Hamilton, bringing in a whole nother generation in just the best ways.
Oh yeah.
And embracing them and bringing them into this amazing way of storytelling.
Yeah, we have a couple of folks in our cast for this production that I've been doing for about a year now that were in various ways involved in the original Broadway production of In the Heights, and they'll tell amazing stories about folks coming to see the show, and even from their own experiences. But they'll tell stories about people coming up to them and saying things like, it was so moving to get to watch a story that was told by people that looked like me, and that was told about people that look like me who aren't drug dealers, terrorists, or whatever.
Yeah.
There weren't guns and knives involved in the
Right.
storyline. And it's such a simple thing, but people have said that to us. We had a whole class of students that came to see a student performance in Seattle write us letters, and I got them. They sort of emailed us this PDF of all of the. And I got them, and I immediately sent a message to the group chat with the cast, and I said, do not read these until after today's show. You will not be okay.
No.
Because it was stories like that. It was, kids who had never been to the theater before, who had no idea that they could see their own stories on stage.
I feel like the only thing that I have to kind of like pull that in is taking it from a gender standpoint, from a female standpoint.
Absolutely.
And the movies that have been coming out, and the one that is always going to be at the forefront of my mind is Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
And I can almost grasp how that feels when suddenly a person who grew up on superheroes and comic books, I mean, my dad and I were always at the comic book store, but we were getting Superman and we were watching Batman in theaters, and we had The Matrix and X-Men, which I love, and Blade, which I'm super stoked about that coming back.
Yeah.
And so you really don't understand what you're missing.
Yeah.
You really don't.
Yeah.
And so it was such a visceral reaction to me when the no man's land happens.
Yeah.
And where suddenly a woman, where the camera is not focusing on one portion of her body, is going someplace no man wants to go and just shreds it. And it wasn't even just that, it was the male characters that were written around her that weren't intimidated by that. They were just like, yep,
Yep.
that's the person, that's the most capable person here. and I'm going to learn from this. I'm going to try and do my best to make sure that this person who's more capable than me succeeds.
Yeah.
And so I can only imagine what that feels like from a cultural standpoint, especially since so much sometimes can be misrepresented.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's actually, I hadn't really thought about it, but what you said is exactly true. It was, on an intellectual level, I'm sure a lot of us sort of understand that we don't see ourselves in media and art as much as we would like. But to experience it for the first time when you do is a shocking experience. It was for me. I mean, the show opened on Broadway about 11, 12 years ago.
Okay.
I saw it very soon thereafter, and I was completely floored. Actually, I met Lynn years later, and he remembered my sobbing ass mess face in the front row during the curtain call.
Oh my
and
God.
it was such an unexpected experience for me to see my story. There's Spanish thrown into the show, and there aren't subtitles, right, to translate. Like, it's just part of their life. There are traditions and sayings and quirks and truisms about the Latinx culture that are just very casually inserted as part of the show.
Yeah.
And they're not explained because they don't have to be, because it's just the way that these characters are. And to see that and to recognize it and to feel connected to it was a very surprising experience, just like you said. Like, I didn't know viscerally what I had been missing until I saw the show.
And it was almost like either a part of you was turned on that had been off, or a piece of you was placed in that you didn't know that you were missing. And it wasn't so much that
Absolutely.
you were like less of a person because of it.
No.
It was just one of those things where you felt at home.
Absolutely. And at that point, I'd been doing theater for 15 years, and I had found so much in musical theater and theater in general and the arts in general to relate to, and that made me feel seen and understood, and that allowed me to express myself in a lot of ways. And there was so much that theater had already given me. But like you say, like it was fitting a missing piece in that I didn't know had been missing, and it was incredible. And I'm so very fortunate that for the last 2 years now, I have made my living going back and forth between music directing in the Heights and performing in Evita as Che in some really, really well-cast, culturally sensitive and appropriate productions of that show, because that show can be a little problematic depending on how it's done, but the ones that I have had the fortune of being in have been really, really well done. And I just can't believe, telling 22-year-old me coming out of college that the highlight of my career, at least, into my early 30s, would be doing Latinx themed shows. I wouldn't have believed it.
I probably also is pretty crazy when you think about the fact that you went and saw In the Heights when it came out, and then suddenly now you're part of it.
Oh yeah, I had said for 10 years, I have to do this show, and like, this is the story of most of my career in life. I imagined it going one way. I always imagined myself getting in and playing Usnavi, the lead. And then I got the offer I actually auditioned for the first show that I ended up music directing, the first production that I ended up music directing. I auditioned to be in it, and the director gave me a call, and he said, "You were great. I am happy to call you back for Usnavi and see you some more in auditions for Usnavi. I think you're great. I think you'd be great in the role. A friend of yours, we're still looking for a music director. A friend of yours got in touch with me and said that you're also a music director. So that's another possibility. We can have a conversation about that, but I do sort of need you to make the choice so that we know if we're going to call you back." Oh, and that was really tough, but it sounds trite, and I myself have a hard time believing it sometimes, but things work out the way that they're supposed to, and I decided that it was more important to me to be a part of the production, to finally get a chance to work on this show that had changed so much about me as a performer, and about my outlook, and about my expectations of my career, that I said, I need the sure thing, which was to be the music director, because he was going to offer me that right there. And I did it, and the guy we found for Usnavi was phenomenal. I couldn't have done it better myself, which put my mind at ease. And it's been amazing ever since. From there I did Evita, and I went back and did In the Heights, and getting to tell those stories has been a real privilege.
That's awesome. And so tell me, oh man, this is so much. I love
I'm ready. I'm so ready.
It's just so. What is kind of like, because we've talked about it. We've talked about mainly within the Heights being able to have that kind of representation and having that positive representation, how important it is. What are some other aspects of musical theater that really draw you in?
Yeah. Music has always been, since I was very young, before any training or whatever, music has always been something that has drawn me to it. Just as I don't know how to describe it. It's a way that I express myself. It is an art form that I have always just sort of understood, that I felt inside of me. Now as I do it professionally, I've had years and years of training, and there is some clinicalness to my approach to music. But it has always just been a way to express myself that I understood. Musical theater in particular does it in a way that speaks to me. It is able to, you can really run the gamut, and we do run the gamut in musical theater. There are shows that are nothing but fluff and whatever, and that's great. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. That is super fun. I love those shows. Sometimes you need an escape. There are shows like In the Heights that tell important stories but are still fun and uplifting. There are shows that can be really difficult. Hadestown, for example, has I guess, sort of uplifting ending, kind of, sort of, but generally it's a pretty tough show. And it tells a beautiful story about the importance of art and of trying and of hope. There's just so much that can be done with it, and I don't know. It's always been not easy for me, but it's always come somewhat naturally to me. Has always been sort of a baseline. I understand this in my soul.
It's
yeah,
so deep.
It's right. It's silly, but it's true. I honestly don't know how to sort of verbalize why I connect with it so much.
It's just a part of you.
It is.
No, and I completely understand. I get that. Maybe not so much from the music aspect. I do love to sing, and I sing fine.
Yeah. Sing great.
You've never heard me sing.
I'm sure you sing great.
There we go. But I can understand that from a storytelling aspect.
Yeah.
And the especially, even to touch just briefly on the D&D aspect, the ability to build a character and the life that you breathe into that character, that has always been second nature to me.
Yeah.
And I always characterize it with, I just have a lot of different people living in me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And sometimes they want me to tell their story, and sometimes they just want to go on the journey with me.
Sure.
And it makes me sound like I have multiple personalities.
No, but I get it.
But so I can get where you're getting. It's something that lives in you.
Yeah.
And sometimes it could be a blessing where it's like it's so great to have that, and sometimes it could be a curse where you're just like,
yeah. Yeah. Well, I love what I do, and I'm very fortunate to be able to make a living doing it. But when people ask me, I always say it is the best career that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. It's a tough business, but like you said, it's something that's inside of me, and I have to do it. I do think also the storytelling thing. I think it's I don't think a ton about the artist that I was when I was a kid and when I was still in grade school. Because I would like to think that I have grown leaps and bounds since then. But it was, I think about it now, and it was a really important part of me figuring out who I was, who I am, and sort of navigating. I mean, as a queer brown person who grew up in the Southeast, I was very fortunate. My town was quite actually progressive and liberal and welcoming. But even so, I mean, it's around, and being able to try on all these different skins and these characters, and to play and to tell other people's stories and to find how their stories related to mine. I realize now, I didn't know it at the time, but I realize now was a really important part of me sort of figuring out how to be myself and who myself was.
And it's interesting when it almost sometimes doesn't feel like your body is your own.
Oh my God, yeah.
And I feel like there are times on stream that happens to me, that I feel like it's not me anymore. It's that character. They wanted to say something.
Oh yeah.
And you find out so much about yourself through that.
Yeah.
And I will always be a huge proponent for that. So we've talked about In the Heights, but do you have a favorite one? I'm going to put you on the spot.
No, it's fine.
I want you to now suddenly forget every musical you've ever seen.
Yeah, right. I mean, I do think, just for so many reasons that we've touched on already, In the Heights might qualify as my favorite. I would still love to get maybe one day the chance to play Usnavi. There is, however, another show. It was the first national tour I ever saw. So it was the first like truly professional theater production I ever saw. It was the first show I saw the first time I visited New York City, so I saw on Broadway. It's the first show that I saw in the West End in London when I went to London for the first time when I was a kid. And it has always sort of been... I say that if I could play the title role in this show, I could probably retire happy. And that's the Phantom of the Opera.
Oh, I knew it. I knew it.
You know, particularly those of us who are in the industry, we all have opinions strongly one way or another about Andrew Lloyd Webber, and that's all totally legit. But I don't know. There's something about that show. It's it's not crazy deep. It has touching moments, but it's not an emotionally wrecking show. It's not any of those things. But
that music takes you on a journey.
It does, and since I was young. It has fit in my voice very well, and as I've gotten older, it just sort of has settled in even more, and I wanna play that role.
I would go bankrupt to A, get you there, and B, to get box seats for the entire time.
I'd get you seats.
The entire time. That was my my first on Broadway show. Mm-hmm. Was Phantom of the Opera.
There you go.
We were able to go to New York City, and by we I mean my husband and I. Mm-hmm. And I point that way because he's running a camera. We got to go there, and we sat down, and he and I were just in tears. Yeah. Like the show had not even started yet.
No, it's
and we're
incredible.
Just looking at it.
It's spectacular.
And they're using literally every square inch mm-hmm. of this thing, and it's so amazing. But my first ever Broadway was The Book of Mormon.
Yes.
Yes. Hello.
Yes, I love it.
But I mean, growing up, these musicals were amazing, and I mean, I in sixth grade was in my one and only ever production, and it was Fiddler on the Roof.
Yes.
And I was the fiddler.
Oh my God.
Yes. Okay. I had 0 lines.
Amazing.
I had my mom's old clothes on.
Great.
I had braces.
Yep.
Acne, and I had like long blonde hair.
Perfect.
And so I had it in braids, and I would put it up in a ponytail. It was horrible.
I love it.
My mom's favorite picture. And they had the stiffle beard.
Oh, yeah, of course they did.
Yes.
Yeah, really good.
Which was difficult for middle school in the 90s.
Amazing.
It was so bad.
Amazing.
And it was so weird going in with an unfair advantage because I had already grown up on that movie.
Yeah.
And they would have given me Hava, but they said I was in 6th grade and they had to give it to an 8th grader.
Oh, well.
Yeah, bullshit.
The politics of theater.
Listen,
They're
you
rough.
made a mistake.
They're rough.
I nailed that audition.
I bet you did.
I
bet
did.
you did.
Well, is there any closing statements you'd like to make?
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's so important to remember how important the arts are to us as a society and as humans. Even if you aren't participating in them, if you're not an artist, you learn so much from them. We have spent the last however many minutes talking about how impactful being able to do a show that represents me and my culture and my people is. And I touched briefly on how important it was for people to be able to see that, but there's so much that theater and the arts have to offer, and budgets are getting cut, school programs are being cut, funding is going away, and even as blockbuster Marvel movies, which are super important too, are making all of this money at the box office, school orchestra programs are going away, and we as a culture have to protect the arts. They are so important, whether it's because we need to see ourselves on screen, whether it's because we need a nonverbal way of getting in touch with whatever it is we're experiencing in the moment. So we go to a concert or a ballet or anything like that, an art show at a gallery. The arts are so important, and I just implore all of you to do whatever you can, whether that's writing a letter to your school board, going to support, vote with your wallet, like they say, like go see a show at your local theater, do whatever you are able to do to make sure that we don't forget how important they are.
Yeah. Adam Driver, who's an amazing actor, is a huge proponent, especially since it helped him through things that he'd seen in the military.
Absolutely.
So it's huge.
Yeah, it is. And it's easy to forget, and it's easy to sort of dismiss as either a luxury or a frivolous activity or sort of fun, which is important but not necessary. It's very easy to see the arts in that way, but they are more than that, and it's important we remember that.
Well, my marching band got more trophies than our football team did. So let that marinate.
Case in point.
Well, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. It's so fun.
And thank you guys for joining us today. The arts are important. It helps us so much to work through everything that especially growing adolescents need. But again, thank you guys so much for coming in. I love you guys. We'll see you next week.
Thanks.
Thank you all for going on this journey with us. Season 1 ends next week with our season finale guest, Dan Dillon. Dan and I discuss D&D game mechanics and components that can deepen roleplay and strategy. Hop over to the Twitter to give myself at Crit Charisma and Variant Roles at Variant Roles a follow, as well as the new Nerd Out Twitter at nerdout_TV. Don't forget, everyone nerds out about something. I love you all. I'll see you next week.